All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Texas League video podcast. Today, we are doing a little bit of post NFL draft analysis. So, we're going to talk a little bit about skill positions only today. We know the importance of things like linemen, linebackers, and kickers and all those guys when it comes to the team are important, but we don't really give a crap about them when it comes to fantasy football because our league doesn't do IDP. And so, yeah, that doesn't matter to us. So, we are going to jump right in to a little bit of draft analysis. So, I would like to introduce my co host by asking him to say his name and then answering the following question. So, Lamar Jackson signed the biggest contract in NFL history by signing after weeks of speculation and the non-exclusive franchise tag and the barbershop talk and analysis by the pundits and insistence that he needed an agent. Lamar finally got paid about 135 million fully guaranteed average yearly salary of $52 million, which eclipsed the yearly average salary signed by Jalen Hurts just a few days before. So, my question to you, Jared, is this. What was he smoking when he said he was going to throw for 6,000 yards?
That is a very good question, sir. One that I cannot answer, but I'm gonna follow instructions. I'm gonna start off by saying my name is Jared Cowan. For those who might not know who I am, because I know you share us on all your different social media. And to try to answer that question, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he was not saying that he was actually going to throw for 6,000 because if I'm not mistaken, he's never thrown for 4,000. I believe what he's saying is he has, for the first time in his career, so much talent at the pass catcher that he feels like he could throw for 6,000. He feels he has the accompaniment to be a productive passer, but I don't think he's going to be that productive of a passer. I think he might crack 4,000 for the first time in his career because he has a new offensive coordinator.
That's a big jump,
right.
though. The man is basically saying he's going to double his passing yards.
Obviously, he's not going for 6. Let's just be real. He's not going to do that. but I do believe he can go for 4.
That would definitely be a jump.
4 seems big because I think his highest I want to say it was like 3,900.
It's right around there.
Because if he throws for 4,000 yards in 16 games, let's say he has a great season, he sits out his last game of the season, that's 250 a game. Any NFL quarterback should be able to throw for 250 a game.
You'd be
if
surprised.
you don't run as much. This is true because also, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer. I believe I read that somewhere. In their history, they have never had a 4,000-yard passer.
I believe that they remain the only team that has not had a 4,000-yard passer. Let's just hit the old Google.
I'm like, how do you
never
not
had a 1,000-yard?
Let's be real, man. They're the Bears.
That would be correct. The Chicago Bears. 38 38 in 1995 by Eric Kramer is the Chicago Bears team record.
They'll be there for a while because
so back in 2015, that answer also included the Eagles and the Seahawks.
Yeah, but that was before Russ got to slinging it.
Right.
Because Pete Carroll was gonna run the ball a lot. But
right.
I think after Marshawn and them slowly started fading away and getting out of there, he had to actually start slinging it a little bit.
Right.
And I'm shocked the Eagles never had a 4,000 yard
I'm
passer,
trying.
considering they had Donovan McNabb there at one point. Him and T.O. should have been able to get them over 4,000, but
Let me
I guess
see
not.
something. Actually, let's hold on. According to the football database, the Eagles still do not have a 4,000-yard passer. Donovan McNabb sitting at uh 39-16. So still two teams. Nope, incorrect. Carson Wentz, 2019, 4,000 yards. I see it now. So yeah,
But the funny, you know,
I also thought that
well,
I figured that Carson would have passed for over 4,000 because Lord especially knows they had no run game a few years ago. So, but yeah, so
no,
okay, so we
well,
luckily for Lamar, they don't really look down uh too poorly on the Jazz cabbage like they used to back in the day. Shout out to Josh Gordon, who would have loved to see some reform in his day. Uh, we'll talk about wasted talent another time. But yeah, so thank you, sir. Thank you for introducing yourself.
now, since you have a question, I have a question for you, sir.
All right.
Actually, it's a twofold question. As we know, we're here to discuss the fantasy relevant players. So I must ask first, out of the 10 fantasy relevant players drafted in the first round, which one of them would you most have liked to see go to your Raiders?
That is an
And
excellent question.
this, as you know, this whole podcast started based on our fantasy league. So once you answer that question, which one of those 10 fantasy relevant players would you most like to see on your fantasy team based on how it currently sits?
That's an excellent
Like
question.
yeah, think to
So
yourself who's on your roster, who you would keep, and then who would be the best addition to that team.
considering the fact that we just let go of our longtime quarterback, our franchise leader, and led the team two times to the playoffs and was pretty much the only consistency we've had in almost the last decade. I would have liked to have seen us move up and take CJ Stroud. I think of the quarterbacks that were available as projected first round draft picks this year. I think that he was probably the most pro ready one. I have my reservations for Ohio State quarterbacks historically. I don't know if they prepare them for a pro style offense. Like we've heard stories of their spread offense and kind of an old school run and shoot, and they have issues with the nomenclature when you get to the NFL and how to call plays. But Stroud's physical gifts are there. Like if he picks up things quickly, he can overcome and use his physical ability to increase his game. So I would love to have seen us pick him up. Um, that being said, I would. Who would I like to see on my team this year? I'm gonna go with Robinson out of Texas. The Falcons are going to be terrible again this year. Somebody's gonna have to score in short yardage situations. They're gonna feed that boy the rock like he was Pookie in that scene in New Jack City. So he's going to get all the opportunity he needs to put up some fantasy points this year.
Not the New Jack City reference. Wow.
I'm just saying, man.
Okay.
Exactly.
Pokey the crazy.
It's
Pokey
just
the
gonna be
crazy.
the Rock just gonna be calling that boy all season long. So,
So
all right.
I take that to mean that you think Atlanta is once again not going to take advantage of all their passing weapons and they're just going to keep running the ball.
Atlanta is wasting Kyle Pitts' career? I know that's not what we're here to talk about, but shit, since we brought it up, let's just be clear, right? Kyle Pitts needs to be on the phone with his agent every single day. He needs to do everything that T.O. did to get himself run out of Philadelphia to get the hell out of Atlanta. Um, the Falcons are a team on fire in a division where Tom Brady just retired, right? The Panthers had a surprisingly productive season last year. You have the Saints have a new quarterback, but they have a lot of question marks, right? Now, Derek Carr is going to be good in that system, and they still got, all world running back Alvin Kamara. You probably have a hungry Michael Thomas for the first time in a couple of years after basically not playing, after basically having a year off last year. Maybe he comes back healthy. So you have opportunity right there if you're Atlanta to fight for your division. But then when you go out and you draft like a drunken monkey, you don't put yourself in position to make any sort of moves to try to be competitive in your division. So I don't see, there's no clear plan, right? Like if you're rebuilding, then get some money off your books. But if you're trying to be competitive and you see a window opportunity, we all know opportunities don't. Windows of opportunity to win in the NFL open and close very fast. So, and Atlanta's basically been stuck in 28-3 since they lost that game. They've been on a decline and have not been competitive. And they're still not showing any sort of plan of action to correct that. So, shout out to Kyle Pitts. Don't let your situation make you feel like you're not productive. You still got a chance to be a good player. It's just not going to be in Atlanta. And that's the whole and half of it. So let's talk about the NFL draft, right? So this year was all about the quarterbacks, right? You had basically 5 first-round projected quarterbacks with at least 3 teams in the top 5 with quarterback needs. One of those teams in the top 5, the Cardinals, have a quarterback. So eventually what we thought would happen with them did happen, which is that they traded out of the top 5 because, like it or not, they're stuck with Kyler Murray. Hopefully, no new Call of Duty expansion packs will come out and he can be fully rehabbed and ready to go for this season. Because again, when we're talking about talent, he's up there, from his arm to his legs to his turbo boost, everything that you want to be able to see him do when he's healthy, he can do on the field. So you already invested a lot in an extension for him. So you don't want to go out there and take a quarterback. So, that pick was there to be traded. And even though it took until draft day for it to happen, it did happen. So going into this draft, you had a question of who was going to go number 1 overall. We knew it was going to be a quarterback. Otherwise, what the hell was the point of the Panthers, trade up and taking the number 1 pick? Like, that's the only reason in my eyes that you would have traded up and taken that number 1 pick in this particular draft is if you're going quarterback. And if you had your eyes on the quarterback that you think sets your franchise up for the next decade. So I'll let you comment on what the Panthers did with that pick. And do you think they got it right?
They drafted Bryce Young out of Alabama. And I'm not gonna say I don't think they picked the right quarterback, but it's kind of like you were saying about C.J. Stroud. I got some concerns, and my biggest concern is Bryce Young is small. And there's some people. He's been that size his whole life. This is true. He also played behind the Alabama offensive line where he didn't take as many hits as he's probably going to take this upcoming season when there are very large men coming at you. You don't have this supreme line in front of you. I still say that he took some extra protein shakes before he weighed in, drank a gallon of water that gets some extra weight on him when he weighed in, because I don't think he's 205. But you know what?
No.
That's the issue. They drafted him, so they go.
No.
So, yeah, that's on them.
We saw way too
From
many
a mental
people.
standpoint,
We saw way too many people comment about how to get yourself an extra 8 to 10 pounds at the weigh-in for me to believe that he actually was up to 205, or or pre-draft somebody was even saying he was 218. I'm like, there's no way in hell that boy's coming in at no 218. Yeah, I'm sorry, but go ahead.
Yeah, like from a mental standpoint, I'm not concerned about him learning a playbook or anything like that. I'm just concerned about him being small and having to play 17 games because, let's be real, I don't even know who the backup quarterback is in Carolina for them to even pretend like, hey, we're going to start somebody else. And you know what? I could see Houston doing that. We'll get to that later. But I don't think Carolina would do it.
No. Let's see. Let's just take a look. Panthers.
I don't even know who the backup quarterback is.
Let's just see Panthers depth chart. Like,
I want to say, my mind says it's Andy Dalton. I swear he left and went to Carolina.
He did. He signed with them.
Okay, it is Andy. Like, I could see, depending on the schedule that comes out tomorrow, I can't see in my mind any teams that Carolina has to play this year that's just going to have defensive front that say, let's not throw that rookie out there quite yet. Even the Panthers they're in the same division as the Bucks. I know there's nobody that I can just, obviously the Bucks, we won that division, so we have a bit tougher schedule than the Panthers. But we play the NFC, you got to play the NFC South. There's no just supreme pass rushers there. You got the AFC South: Houston, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Tennessee. I can't think of nobody that's got pass rushers that's just gonna make you fear. No. So start him in. You got
the coach defense is better than people give it credit for, but you don't just think that heavy pass rush is not what you think, right? But
solid defense, but I can't think of the pass rushers. Now I'm intrigued. Who was on the Panthers? Who was the Panthers 2023? Like I said, I can't. Ain't like you got to see San Francisco when you got to worry about a Bosa brother coming at you.
Right.
And yeah, I'm like,
and it's definitely not like he's in the AFC West where, in terms of pass rush, if you're playing in the division, you don't get a weekend. The AFC West or the NFC West, you don't really get a weekend off if you're playing your division opponents. If you're a quarterback, like there's no time off where you're just gonna be able to chill in the pocket if you're a rookie quarterback. So okay. So he was the first quarterback off the board. Number 2, the Texans went with CJ Stroud. And I think that the Texans, just from their head coach, I know he wants to play up-tempo, fastest. I think that these 2 picks could have easily been swapped. I think if the Panthers had taken CJ Stroud first, the Texans would have taken Young either way. But either way, Houston gets a quarterback. They got tired of pretending that they didn't actually need a franchise QB. Like Deshaun gone for a year, and last year's forgettable list of starting QBs with Davis Mills, whoever else they threw out there, like they're forgettable. If your quarterback is forgettable in the NFL, you're not going to win. Period. Not in today's game. And when you think Houston Texans and you have to go, who's their quarterback? Yeah, no, they're not going to win. They're going to be bad. And so they needed another option at quarterback. And so they went out and got one. And now the most interesting pick now is Anthony Richardson from Florida, the Florida quarterback who really is of the top 5 picks, probably the one that they would consider the biggest quote unquote project. Again, all the physical tools to be a successful quarterback. Plays in the SEC, so used to strong competition from a big time program, so the lights aren't going to scare him. But a franchise that since the day Andrew Luck retired has struggled to find consistency at that position. Last year, we know everything that happened with them, and the year before. So over the last 2 seasons, they've just not been producing the way they need to. So they're hoping that they found another solution to the quarterback position in Anthony Richardson. What do you think? What do you think they've got in young Mr. Richardson?
If they're smart, they're gonna go with the Justin Fields approach, and you kind of just let him play pickup ball, basically. Because I'm not our missing co-host, but I did do some math, and here's something I heard somebody say this on the podcast, so I pulled out a calculator. Like I said, I don't have that PhD in math. And do you know that if Anthony Richardson passes for 3,200 yards and runs, I think I did the math. If he passes for 32 and runs for 12, he will more than likely be the #1 fantasy quarterback. That production, along with some touchdowns, he will score more points than Patrick Mahomes scored last year, minus the touchdown, just on yardage. And Mahomes passed for well over 5,000 yards.
Right. That's not bad.
So they don't let him use his legs. They don't,
Well, the good news for them is, they've got Senior Mustache and Gardner Minshew in there now. I think they let him sit. I don't think that he's going to go out there and beat Minshew out to start the season because he's got raw talent. But at some point, much like with the Bears, if the Colts aren't winning games or if they're in a position where they can try to make some changes in order to try to take an early lead in that division, I see him getting worked into games in the first third of the season to eventually take over as a starter. So it becomes a situation where, okay, like you said, because of his fantasy potential, right? If the season's going really bad, they're going to be like, screw it, let's get the kid some experience. And then he becomes a potential viable fantasy bench to throw in for a bye week, or even if you're in a dynasty league, holding on to. Not for this year, but for next year, right? But if Minshew lights it up, Richardson just gets to develop. And then we get to see 2024 if he gets unleashed. So, but either way, this is I want to say that they just mentioned that it's first time in history that 3 black quarterbacks have been taken back top 5. 3 very different quarterbacks. Whereas historically they might all be looked at through the same lens, but through the development of different systems, different schools, these young men all have the opportunity to take their talents to the next level and be something special for their teams, because all their teams need a quarterback. Like, I don't see any reason that especially Young and Stroud don't start this year. And it's just like any other pro sport. Somebody's got to score, right? So we might not know who CJ Stroud is going to throw the ball to, but we know that the Texans are going to have to throw the ball. So you can safely say 3,000 yards is reasonable. from a fantasy standpoint. Again, probably won't be a starter. Shouldn't be your starter to start the season unless you really suck at fantasy football or you got a 20-team league or some nonsense like that. But reasonably, like you said, 200 yards a game, 225, 230, couple that with a touchdown or two. Try to minimize the interceptions. Viable for a fill-in for a bye week.
Hey, if Davis Mills can go for 3,000, he can go for at least 3. He got to go for 3,000.
Right. All right. So that being said, besides the quarterbacks, who is one of the for the skill positions? Who do you think has potential from the first round skill positions for fantasy impact right away this fall?
I'm gonna go with Jahmyr Gibbs because the Lions drafted him at 12. Said that they would have drafted him earlier if they had traded up, and then they traded away Swift. And the touchdown vulture that was there last year is no longer there. So I don't think you draft a running back that early if you're not going to actually give him the ball. Then I read somewhere, it's Twitter, so take it for what it's worth. They plan to line him up in the slot and take advantage of his ability to catch the ball. Which I go, okay, that could be useful, especially for those who play in PPR leagues of any sorts. Those catches come in handy.
That should be interesting. I mean, so we saw some of that with Travis Etienne with Jacksonville. When you got a player that's got that skill set, and then the other part of it is, who knows with the NFL what these players are going to start being when it comes to quote unquote positionless offensive players. Like it's not the first time. Like the league seems to have always had a few players that are slash players, just a throwback to Cordell Stewart, right? Players that can play in the backfield, play in the slot, play on the outside. Like that's not a new concept. But I think that with today's offensive schemes, the idea of being able to have a player that you can get the ball to in space and let them work, especially when they have speed, is something that every team can appreciate. And you have to just figure out how to fill those roles. Right? So I can see that. Not gonna lie, that was a head scratch pick. When it happened, the trade made more sense when they pulled the trigger, but I was just like, 3 of the last 4 years, you've gone running back if you're Detroit. And and I know I said this in our group chat, but it's kind of reminded me of the 3 years in a row in the 2000s when the Lions went wide receiver first round every year. And it's just like, dude. Now, one of those wide receivers, of course, was Megatron. So, hey, if that's what it turns out to be. And so, if if Gibbs turns out to be a solid running back and a productive running back, then it's good for the team. And it's also good for fantasy football because the Lions can't stop nobody, but they will score. So we shall see. I'm gonna go as my first round potential impact since he's not here. I hope this is really gonna make him feel bad, or it even actually hurts me to say this. But I'm gonna go with Quentin Johnston as my fantasy potential impact player from the first round who went to the Chargers. The Chargers have one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. They put a lot of yards through the air. They score a lot of points through the air. They have a coach who is about to outsmart himself out of a head coaching job if he does not stop shooting himself in the foot in finding a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. But he knows how to put his players in position to score. His offensive scheme is good, and with the way with them potentially having some roster changes by the end of this year in order to save some money, I can definitely see Johnston filling in quickly and becoming one of Justin Herbert's favorite weapons this fall. So he's the player that I pick from the first round to have some good potential fantasy impact.
Do you think the change of offensive coordinator affects the? How do you think their change of offensive coordinator affects their offense?
Um, I don't think it's going to be as bad as it looks. I honestly feel like that was a scapegoat firing. You have a
Oh, I
collapse
agree.
when you have a collapse in the playoffs like that. Like I just think that you have to fight. Everyone can if the head coach keeps his job, which there was a lot of. It was definitely a coin toss on whether or not he was going to be fired for the second year in a row for some end of game decisions that were made. But somebody had to catch the L for the way that they collapsed in the playoffs, and so. But I think the bigger issue, though, is not necessarily the loss of the offensive coordinator. Right now, the issue is you're gonna have to pay Austin Eckler uh, because again, we're talking about a player that does it all for you. And if you want to be able to keep your offense going the way it's been going, that little strong son of a gun has literally put the team on his back the last couple of years. So you better find a way to make the economics work because you're going to have to extend your all-world quarterback soon. And what you don't want to have to do is try to make too many offseason extensions at the same time. So you do yourself a favor, stop acting like the man hasn't earned it, pay Eckler, and move past the issue. So, but that's just my opinion. All right. So let's go on to the second round. Who do you like in? Because again, there's still a lot. So really, there's a lot of value in the first three rounds when it comes to the NFL draft, especially when it comes to offensive players, because there's so much stock that gets put in defensive players and high value defensive linemen and offensive linemen, players, that don't get drafted first, second round. People often think that these guys don't have value, even though history has shown time and time again that players, just because you're not a first round draft pick, doesn't mean that you're going to be a good pro, and vice versa. Going early doesn't guarantee success. So, who do you like from the second round for potential fantasy impact for the year?
Um, that second round was a little, the second round I was watching from the Orlando airport compared to watching the first round from a sports bar at Universal City Walk. But I'm gonna go with, and this might, I'm sure this will make you smile. I'm gonna go with a tight end. I know how you feel about those tight ends. I know how you feel about them. I'm gonna have to go with the Raiders with Mayer, where is that? Michael Mayer, because in a trade which still makes no sense to me. I still can't figure out why you traded Darren Waller, but you traded him. So now you bring in Michael Mayer. You have Jimmy G at quarterback, and Jimmy G is known to check it down to a tight end. Mind you, his tight end was George Kittle, so that might play a little bit into it. But he's never been the guy who's just gonna beat you over the top a whole lot. Obviously, if he could, San Francisco would have a Super Bowl, but that is another conversation for another time. So I think he's gonna check it down to Mayer when he's not handing it off to Josh Jacobs, and Mayer is going to be a sneaky fantasy producer because let's be real. Anybody that's played fantasy these last couple of years know if you didn't have Travis Kelce, then you was rolling the dice every week because everybody else was hit or miss. Kittle had a couple good weeks. Andrews had a couple good weeks. Other than that, it was just who? Because as we talked about earlier, they wasn't throwing the ball to Kyle Pitts before he got hurt. And Dawson Knox was hit or miss in Buffalo, touchdown dependent. And the rest of the tight ends, from a fantasy standpoint, didn't do a whole lot. Michael Mayer might be that. He might be the guy to come in and be a solid top 10 tight end. Because in fantasy, you don't have to do a whole lot to be a top 10 tight end.
No, but you do need to be consistent. So it's funny that you mentioned Knox, and although he actually signed a contract extension prior to last season, he had a personal tragedy, the loss of his brother, and it was with him the whole season. Like, he was non-existent as a fantasy player. And again, this is not trying to say that fantasy football or even any football is more important family, but we're talking about the context of the professional football and just the realities of it, right? So Buffalo actually surprisingly took a tight end in the first round. Now, so Kincaid was listed on many draft boards as maybe tight end 4. So the fact that they reached up and took him, and he was the first tight end off the board, shocked a lot of people. Michael Mayer, most of all, I'm sure. But as a Raiders fan, I'm okay with it because that meant Michael Mayer was there for us in the second round. So yes, I'm going to pick somebody different, to speak about, but I'm going to echo and say, yes, I appreciate that. I do think that was a good value pick for us there in the second round. Looking for a weapon to, for us there in Las Vegas. So for me, I'm actually going to stay in the AFC West with my second round pick, and I'm going to go with Mims for the Denver Broncos. So last season, Russ seemed to be cooking with leftover scraps, one eye closed, and nothing but leftover mystery lunch meat. But one thing that Russ has done throughout his career is he will turn a slot receiver into a star. And with Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton on the outside in Denver, Mims has a chance to do something special out of that slot position in Denver. Because, again, like you were talking about, when the play breaks down, Russ is not going to take off and run on you anymore, right? But he is going to be looking for somebody underneath that understands how to break their route off and make himself available to the quarterback. Now, Oklahoma QBs, they are who they are, right? But the reality is that Oklahoma QBs have had good targets to throw to. And Mims comes from a program that knows how to put yards and a whole lot of points on the board. So I think he's going to give Russ a nice new toy to play with up there in the Mile High City, a nice fresh ingredient for him to cook with, to say, for this year.
Not to mention, let us not forget that they got Sean Payton.
Right.
I think Sean helps Russ get back to his
yes,
cooking. I think he's
that. So sometimes the things you need. Sometimes you shake up one thing and that doesn't work, so you shake the next thing up. So for them, they shook up the quarterback position. Russ is still one of the smartest quarterbacks in the game. He's still one of the toughest quarterbacks in the game. And he's going to have himself prepared mentally and physically for the season because he understands the expectations, right? There's 31 teams chasing the Chiefs right now. And he gets to play them twice a year. And I'm sure he would love the opportunity to knock Mahomes off of his little pedestal he's sitting on right now. And now he's got a coach that's got enough intelligence and experience in championship situations and high pressure situations that's not going to fold when he sees Andy Reid across the side of the field. So, all right. So, we have to talk about your boy. We have to talk about two players that went early in the second round that were highly projected to go in the first round. So the first one is we have to talk about your boy Will Levis. Jared, what's up with you guy?
Why you got to? I'm just trying to figure out why you got to be my boy. I was not a Will Levis
I mean,
guy.
we'd have to go back and check the tweets, but I'm pretty sure you were one of the first people that tweeted that Will Levis was going number 1 overall.
Oh, sir, you are mistaken on that one. I am not going to acknowledge such foolishness from you today, sir. But
Bruh.
I feel that Will Levis, I'll say this, I do a lot of reading at work when I should be working, but that's a whole other conversation. I read somewhere that the Titans wanted to move if the Texans had not taken CJ Stroud at 2, that the Titans were in talks with the Cardinals to move up to 3. So they probably were they might have been trying to get Anthony Richardson. They might have been trying to get CJ Stroud. We never know. I'm thinking they wanted Stroud. When he left, they backed out. And I think after he left, they're like, you know what? I think they had Young and Stroud in one tier, and then they had like Richardson and Levis in another tier. And then when Richardson might have been in a tier by himself, that second tier. Then when he went, they're like, all right, we're not gonna move up for him. And then they're just like, if Levis falls to us, he falls to us. And he started falling. They're like, you know what? We're gonna let him fall to the second round. And I told somebody in the group, I said in the group chat, from a financial standpoint, if Levis turns out to be a decent quarterback, which is all you have to do to get an extension, because look at Daniel Jones.
Right.
Because he is not a first rounder, there's no 5th-year option, which means you get the 5th-year quarterback contract. You get to negotiate a year before Young, Stroud, and Richardson.
Right.
And then actually, if you smart, you gonna negotiate before whoever went in the draft last year, because them 5th-year options will be coming up. You won't have to just get, because let's be real. I think Malik Willis was a mistake pick last year. So they said, you know what, we're going to take Will Levis, and one of them got to turn into something because they got 1 year left on Tannehill's contract unless he just has a blow up year.
We can stop. We can stop.
I don't think he will either. I don't think he will.
Tannehill's best years are behind him.
You have to put it out there.
Tannehill's best years are behind him. Right? Let's just be honest. He's 2 years past when, as a lot of my people that I know that still live in Nashville, he's 2 years past when they thought he was going to be replaced as the starting QB. Like, that team has been all Derrick Henry. And now with the rumors of Derrick Henry seeking either an extension or a trade, now you definitely need to have someone there at quarterback that can lead that team. Because if you get rid of Derrick Henry, you're getting rid of the heart of your offense for the past 3 seasons. We can talk about how ridiculously stupid that would be another time. But if you do move Derrick Henry, you better have something cooking at quarterback. So, but then the other player that slid wasn't actually an offensive player. It was a defensive player. Cornerback Joey Porter Jr., highly rated out of Penn State. Thought that he was going to go in the first round, projected first round. Saw 2 or 3 cornerbacks come off the board before him. But eventually...
I don't I don't think he slid. Well,
Oh, he did.
in my opinion, I don't think he slid.
So let's
You
just take
you the first pick of the second round. You all
right. But you know, it's the stigma of being told that you're gonna. So it wasn't as bad as Will Levis, right? Like looking at things because you never know how teams are gonna draft when it comes to need versus best player available. And so because of the wackiness that was going on in the first round, things got shifted, right? So maybe there was a team that needed a quarterback that didn't take you in the first round. And that's one thing. But the week of the draft, Will Levis went from being what plus 5,000 to be the number one overall pick to plus 500. Somebody started a rumor that that young man was going to go number one overall. And they said something like before the draft, he had a less than 2% chance of not being drafted in the first round. And then he went in the second round. Either way, I wish both of those young men the best opportunity for their careers. Joey's in a great situation playing for one of his dad's former teams where his father was a legend, on one of those Super Bowl teams. And Will has a chance to go to Tennessee and give them a future at the quarterback position. Now, Levis, some days I look at him, I see potential. The other days I look at him and see, oh, look, Zach Wilson got drafted again 2 years in a row. So it's on him to decide what he's going to do. Is he going to use this slide to the second round as fuel to do something great? And I certainly hope so. So for you, so real quick, what player out of any position in any round do you think was a steal? Was the steal of the draft? And this can be defensive players,
right.
offensive players.
I'm gonna go with somebody who I didn't think. Well, I thought the hype would get him drafted a little higher than this. I'm gonna go fourth round. Cornerback from Georgia, Kelee Ringo, as the Philadelphia Eagles have decided that we are just going to we're going to bring in all the Georgia defensive players we can.
The Philadelphia,
if it works for them,
the Philadelphia Bull
the
Eagles, the Philadelphia Bull Eagles.
Like, I don't understand how a cornerback who was on 2 national championship teams flies to the fourth round. I didn't think he was that bad, but what do I know? Man, he was second team All SEC. I just pulled it up because he was second team All SEC, and they say there's the stigma that the SEC is the conference because they keep winning championships, and
it ain't a stigma. It ain't a stigma. It is what it is.
I'm gonna say the same thing I've always said about the SEC. Just like most conferences, it's top heavy. They got a couple teams that keep winning, and the rest of the division is average like everywhere else. But they keep winning, so you can't fault them.
So I'm gonna use an old quote from Jay-Z to say, to talk about the SEC dominance. Jay-Z on one of his songs said, "The only dudes moving units is M, Pimp Juice, and us," referring to Rockefeller. Right now, the only teams winning championships is Alabama, Georgia, and Clemson. So, and Clemson is about 3 years removed from being a viable threat in the college playoffs. Like, again, the window is open. You burn bright, and then it closes. So, yeah. Until somebody else start moving units, it's the SEC.
Now, when they expanded to 12 teams, they still run in the game. Like I said, They got the championships in the SEC in football, so you can't knock them.
Not at all.
But like most conferences, they top heavy just like everybody else. Because it's
I'm
like
gonna
when Alabama lines up on the field, 9 times out of 10, you expect Alabama to win
yes. And the
because
tenth
they are that
time
team in that conference.
and the 10th time for the last 3 years is when they played Georgia. That's the only one out of those 10 where you don't expect Alabama to win. So but all right. So for me, my steal of the draft is Jalen Hyatt in round 3 to the Giants. Uh, you can say what you want about Jalen Hyatt. Say what you want about Tennessee. But I'm gonna take a quote from Steve Smith. Oh, you think he's undersized? You don't think he know how to run routes? But every time you look at the film, Jalen Hyatt's always open. Jalen Hyatt's always catching the touchdown. Jalen Hyatt's always catching the pass. How he got to the 3rd round, I do not know. I don't know. And I'm sure the Giants, when they were sitting there looking at it like, well, we did just give this quarterback this big ass contract. Maybe we should make sure he has someone to throw the ball to. So now Jalen Hyatt's got Daniel Jones has a nice, brand new, shiny toy to play with for the year. And I think he's going to put up numbers that are going to make a lot of teams that drafted receivers in front of him very sad. So, all right. So, real quick, what is a pick by your Bucks that you really liked, and what's a pick by your team that you didn't like so much?
I liked, because we took that defensive lineman in the first round. I've always felt we needed offensive linemen. So when they came back in the second round and took an offensive lineman who gives me the same vibes as our center. So I'm like, you know what, I like this dude. He came from North Dakota State. All they do is run the ball. We couldn't run the ball to save our lives last year. Any dude that has missing a couple teeth up front, it's just, you know what, let's get that guy in there. So he just gives me that vibe. And then I watch a little film on him on YouTube. He gives me that Jensen vibe. He straddles the line between dirty and good player. I'm like, he's the guy that if he's on the field, you want to fight him, but if as a fan, you like, I like this guy. That's the vibe he gives me.
Shout out to Cody. Cody's had the joy of blocking for my nephew for the past 4 years up there at North Dakota State. I'm happy to see that young man go from being an undersized tight end when he came in to getting some meat put on him and turning himself into an opportunity for to have an NFL career as an offensive lineman. But he's a real good kid, super sweet, but definitely got some nasty in him when you snap that ball. So I think that was a great pick for y'all too. Now, what's a pick you didn't really like?
This one might get me some, depending on who watched this, it might get me some negative comments, but I don't care. I wasn't too high on us selecting that DB from K-State because obviously I watched K-State. Our secondary was not that great. I think we could have got him as an undrafted free agent and picked somebody else.
Wow.
But it is what it is. He was a 6th rounder, so it wasn't like we just went up and reached for him. But I do think that he might have been there as an undrafted free agent, or we could have picked somebody else and would have been all right.
Fair enough.
But it's like he wasn't as consistent as I was. That's probably why he's in the 6th round. Our secondary was real hit or miss this year. But you know what? It is what it is. I will say this. I did see his interview when they, the Buccaneers people interviewed all of the draft picks. And like I said, he's a real, the way he talked, he sounds like a real nice guy. but I wasn't sold on him as a pick. But he did say something that made me come around on him a little bit. He says his uncle played for the Bucks back in the day. So I'm like, you know
Mm,
what? He got the lineage. I'll let him make it.
that's what's up. That's what's up. So for my Raiders, we already talked about Michael Mayer. I think that was a great pick for us in the second round. Um, to me, again, we know I love the mismatch created by a good quality tight end. Um, Linebackers are too slow, and defensive backs are too small. So a good tight end is a great weapon to have. And so I love that pick. For me, um, I'm also gonna say I like Tyree Wilson as a player. I like him on the team. I did not like him in the first round. Um, I completely understand why they didn't draft Jalen Carter. I get it. We've had too many off the field incidents as a team over the last couple of years to draft a player that's coming in with that whole reckless driving, you know, accident, death. It's too close to the incidents that we just got through dealing with over the last 18 months, right? But he's a good kid and he's a solid player. And I think that the Eagles got a steal in Carter at number 9. And I think that we could have had him on our team. Now, again, like you said, when I look at him, I look at a player who plays defensive end, but he can be moved around on the line, right? So, he can be moved inside. Um, but there's going to be times where he gets to line up opposite of Max Crosby, and we know who's going to see the double team in that situation. Or if he's on the field and it's him, Crosby, and Chandler Jones, he's going to get a lot of one-on-one looks depending on the defensive formation. So we'll see what happens, right? Like I said, I like him as a player. I didn't like him in the first round. I felt like that was a reach for the round and the pick that we took him at. So we shall see. But all right. Well, thanks for coming along with us as we went through a couple of this year's draft picks and what we see their impact will be on the fantasy landscape for the fall. We're going to come back and do I believe what we said we're going to do our next show after the keepers are in. Is that when we said wanted to target?
So we can talk about people like, man, you kept that person.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to take a little bit of a break until it's time for keepers. So our next show will be after all the teams have declared their keepers, because I also suspect that there's going to be a few more trades and a few more roster moves as we figure out which 24 players will come off the board before this year's draft even begins. So
and
maybe
we can get our second co-host to to join us, because he been busy this offseason.
You can't never knock a man's hustle. But shout out to Dr. Deuce out there expanding those minds, trying to make sure that these people can get their graduation in, tutoring these kids. So yeah, hopefully we'll have him back when it's time for us to discuss this year's Texas League keepers and take a look at what's going to happen as we head into this year's fantasy football season. So check those rosters, check those reports, make sure that your team is ready, and we'll see you next time.